And welcome back. We're discussing how new media can be developed here in Singapore, and we have with us the key members of AIMS, who recently released a 95-page report with recommendations to the government.
Okay, I think we have a web comment by Blackjack. He says, the word regulation itself is so off-putting. The beauty of the internet is that it's been shown that people know how to regulate themselves when they see something objectionable, racist, extremist. Okay, we report to the police ourselves. We don't need our nanny coming in again with caps. Okay, so Siu Hao, you were saying that you have a retort for this?
No, it's not just a retort. The idea is that when we came out of the paper, everybody keeps thinking of it as regulation. But the fact is that it's not about regulation. Nowhere in our paper, or rather, we are not advocating new regulation. And the idea is not regulation. The idea is that we are putting out a consultation paper, some issues that we've thought about, and some issues that we've consulted the public about, the various experts that we've spoken to, and we're putting it as a discussion paper. This is not the end of it. This is not even the final paper that we're coming out with. This is something as a start for the public to talk about. Now, if you think about it, the internet is a huge playground. There's no way we can really go to every crook and cranny and really regulate everyone.
Yeah.
That was never in our minds. What we're saying is that, look, guys, we're coming in to say, hi, we're here. Come talk to us. We'd like to talk to you.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, regarding how do you propose quality control in the public forums? Let's say if somebody's going to talk to the government, how do you propose that, you were saying quality control in the report, right?
Well, the idea is you're in a conversation. In every conversation, there's different rules. In different medium, different traditions and norms apply. We are saying, look, guys, there's this established traditional medium that is out. That has been going on forever. Now we've got a new media. Now we've got a new platform. We are saying we are going to come in and engage you.
I guess, back to the regulation bit, I guess we Singaporeans are so used to regulation that even when you call it a different thing, we kind of think it's regulation.
So latch on to the same,
And we've accepted it, but I think, some people just want that freedom, so...
Okay, I think... Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay, I think what's on a lot of people's minds also is that when they do participate in the public forum, are they allowed to go in as an anonymous person? Or, if they go in as a named person, are there any penalties involved? Let's say if you go in and, not contribute to the quality.
I think you cannot avoid anonymous comments. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people out there, not just within Singapore, but outside Singapore. But outside people outside Singapore who have an interest in what's going on in Singapore, they will come in, And I think it's not possible to tell everyone that before you put your comments online, please say who you are. That's not the culture of the net, And I think it's not right, to insist, that you should do that, But I'd like to go back to the point that's been made by your viewer, that there ought to be no regulation, we know how to regulate ourselves. Actually, the experience elsewhere have shown us that is not the case. That you do need to have some regulation because self-regulation is not sufficient to protect the interests of many people. For example, in Europe, right? They are more homogeneous culturally, ethnically compared to us. We've got multiracial, multi-religious country, right? But in Europe, they have a law which was introduced, I think, a year ago when we were there. The European Union had a law that says that, look, hate speech is prohibited. You cannot use hate speech, to attack another person. That is a prohibition. That is a regulation. And I think, in fact, in the course of our discussions, we have got emails from people who told us exactly that.
Okay, I think somebody actually commented saying that the government always says it reserves the right to some confidentiality when it's making decisions. With regards to, for example, its GIC investments. Okay, fine, we leave you alone. So now you leave us alone.
That's a good one.
So how would you react to that?
I think it is not wise, to divide Singapore this way.
Mm.
I think what we want is a more united community. If we have a community that's going to end up us and them, is that good for us?
Mm.
I think we should see ourselves as we, rather than you and us.
Yep.
I think there's a lot to be said, about belonging to a community, than to have a community that's going to split along these lines.
Okay.
That's my take. I don't know how my colleagues feel.
Okay, we have another comment, this time from a star blogger, my fellow star blogger, Julian. Hello, Ju, how are you? Thanks for watching this. You say, Ju, that the internet is merely a tool, and as such, it has the power to do both good, if used well, and harm, if misused. That said, perhaps it should have its own checks and balances. By its very nature, the net should allow the weight of common sense to impose itself on any discussion. He goes on to say, if I were to say something stupid, which he sometimes does, if he goes on to say something stupid on the net, surely an open and free forum, as opposed to an overly regulated one, would enable swift intellectual reprisal and counter-argumentation from other, more informed voices to come crashing down on me. Okay, let me just digest your question, Ju.
Okay, so I think maybe he's okay. I'm just guessing, but maybe he's saying that the law of the jungle, internet is a jungle, and if you are weak and you are weeded out, your opinion won't be heard. So no matter what, people will just come down on you, and there'll be stronger voices. So trust on those stronger voices.
Yep.
I mean, I think that there's nothing in that message that I would disagree with. I think that's completely right. I think we saw examples where people posted seditious comments, and the internet community flamed those people. And I think that if they were to do it again, they'll probably think twice. So completely agree, but that doesn't mean that government shouldn't have its voice heard as well. It doesn't mean that government doesn't have its own right to use internet as a platform.
Voice.
If you don't want to listen to government, that's fine. If you want to disagree with government, that's fine. But we're not suggesting that government should come in, take away people's confidentiality. How can the government do that? The internet is something that I think where government's remit is fairly limited as well. So what we're saying is, let's have a diversity of voices. Let's hear everybody out, and let's agree to disagree. And as Yip Sing puts it, agreeably, hopefully.
Okay. Aaron, your thoughts?
No, I was just thinking the same thing. I mean, there's this perception that when we are trying to talk about things like regulation, we're not telling the government to throw the book of law at people when things happen. In fact, we're doing the opposite. We're trying to say, look, lift up your regulations and things like discarding the need to register. If you're an individual and you want to talk about politics, let go. What's the point in that? But at the same time, I get the sense that people are saying, don't come to my space.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you prevent somebody from coming to your space when the space is as big as the internet? And
I think what people are sort of worried about is that, whereas if I tell you, do not come to my space, that's fine. But as a government authority, you can sort of impose penalties. So I think that's the one where you can step outside your bounds as another user and come down on me in other ways.
Yeah. So precisely that's precisely what we were concerned with as well. I mean, look, some of the regulations we felt were outdated. Internet has moved on. Now it's Web 2.0. People are posting, not just receiving content, but posting, creating their own content. So it doesn't make sense for the government to have a heavy-handed approach, even though there was a light-touch regulation policy at work. And we were saying, look, review the laws. I think some of this can be lifted, and only in extreme circumstances, like racial or religious incitement,
seditious content.
That would seriously may have a serious impact on people's lives. And that's it. Look, okay, we can deal with that. We can live with those kinds of regulations, because we don't know what the consequences will be if we were to allow something like that happen.
Okay. All right. Before the break, we talked about how the government can engage netizens. But what about political content that's online? Okay, we're going to take a video. Here's what some people had to say.
Well, will you be afraid to voice out your comments on the internet?
If I'm anonymous, I'm not afraid. But if my full name is there, yes, I'm afraid.
I will not be afraid that, I have to fill in all the details and stuff like that. Then when I want to voice out something online, I know that people are going to see it, people are going to discuss about it. I don't want to, I've got nothing to hide, basically. Yeah, if I've got something to hide, then I wouldn't have even voiced it out to start with, so it will not be a problem for me.
I feel that I'm not the only one doing it, so I won't be that unlucky to be targeted or something like that. Yeah, and I don't feel that I feel that there is over paranoia in Singapore. I feel that if you just say something, I don't think the government is that free to come and hunt you down or something like that. Yeah.
Do you think there's a reason why there's this over paranoia going on?
I think it comes from a lot of those stories that people like to say, like, oh, do you know this so and so, something like that, or maybe like we see things happening to some political dissidents like Dr. Chee Soon-Juan. Yeah, so we kind of feel that it might happen to us.
Slowly, people will have to start to realize that, you know, it's okay to voice out your opinions, and it can only be a gradual change.
Right now, I don't think I will, but if they open up more, probably will. Yeah.
How can they open up? In what way?
I mean, right now, the set of laws and everything are quite restrictive in a way that it's punishable if you say something bad or anything. So if they're more liberal and more open to things, criticizing them, not because we don't like it, but because it's for the better good of the public, then yeah, I would comment more on issues, basically.
Start a culture whereby you willing to listen, do not take any divergent views, you try to be accommodating and try to let them know that there is a proper way to discuss, to learn about certain issues, be it social, be it political, especially political, because it's more of a sacred area we do not talk about. But I think all the more you make it a sacred area, it becomes really bad.
So that's what the people on the street have to say. Now let's take a look at AIM's recommendations on political content.
That's right.
Secondly, the current regulations on online political content appear to be too broad and vague. Technologies such as YouTube or other online video sharing sites has outpaced the law and made it unenforceable. Other legislations that protect religious and racial sentiments are already in place. The 1998 Amendment to the Films Act, Section 33, is too restrictive for online political discourse. New media technology is proving to be an important platform for political purposes. There are three options recommended. Firstly, to narrow the scope of the law. Secondly, to repeal against Section 33, which is the ban of political films, or to do it in phases. The aim is to allow voters to consider the issues rationally and not be unduly swayed by information that mislead or trivialize important issues.
Okay, so I mean, like, given that the repeal and people's reactions, you know, a lot of people are saying that, you know, if they had more clear and open channels, that they would give a lot of feedback. So far, has AIMS received any feedback?
Yeah, we did. The sentiment is quite strong that you need to liberalize, you need to open up the space for discussion, and that's really consistent with what we are suggesting. Some people want to have greater liberalization. Some people take a little bit more cautious approach and say, look, liberalize, but please bear in mind, you know, the dangers of, you know, hate speech, you know, the danger of, you know, innuendos, seditious content. So we have a whole range of reactions, but the general feedback is positive. That, look, you know, we have to be more up to date. We have to open up. You know, one good example is the Films Act.
Yeah.
Section 33 of the Films Act. You know, if you look at the law, you know, and Cheng Han is a lawyer. Dean of the, you know, he'll tell you that it is so wide-ranging, that technically Jack Neo is in breach of the law. He's making a political film. Technically speaking, from a legal point of view, of course, I mean, it was silly to prosecute him.
Yeah.
But technically, the law, you know, does not allow that kind of content to be produced. So, quite clearly, you know, you cannot have a law that is so, you know, I mean, doesn't make sense.
Okay, so okay, why is there? Okay, you guys suggested that maybe blackouts during the period of elections and all that. So why is political film such a big no-no?
The reason is that, you know, we have a very short campaign period in Singapore. The law only allows you 9 days of campaigning, you know. And you can see from the experiences in America, which is having their elections, you can see the experience you have across the causeway in Malaysia, you know, that you can have content, video content, clips, you know, that is damaging to the other party, you know, and films, you know, have an impact on people very different from if you read the newspaper, because films visceral, there's images,
very visual
there's sound,
story, right?
very visual, powerful impact. And if you allow a film, you know, that unfairly attacks another person, right, and the other person does not have time to respond and reply to you, because if you put up that clip, say a day or 2 days before the actual polling starts, where you put in your vote, you know, the other guy has no chance to respond to you. So, in fairness to the other guy who's been attacked, you know, I think you need to have a quarantine period, you know, whereby, you know, you got to use other channels to communicate, but leave out this part. I mean, it's just one idea that we think. You know,
I think some people do have sort of like an issue with, like, you know, the blackout period where, you know, you guys were saying that, you know, politicians and the government should be more engaged with new media, so you probably put out like YouTube stuff and all that. Whereas for them, like the users, they are quarantined, you know, so there's no two-way dialogue. It's more like, okay, one way you're imposing, and then, you know, how do I say something back? I can't, you know. So I think that's the backlash of feelings.
Yeah, I concede that, you know, I mean, there is a flaw in that recommendation, but you got to bear in mind that there is a downside to having a free-for-all, especially during a sensitive time, you know. That's point one. The other point really is that, you know, the new media is not the only platform available for discussion.
Speaker's Corner.
No, you can use Razor TV.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Of course.
You can use Razor TV.
We are
You're having a good discussion.
Unregulated,
right?
yes.
Yeah, and you have what they call a niche license, right? You got a niche license. So people should also make use of other channels that are available. Razor TV, there is Storm, there's a newspapers published by the SPH group, right? There's television run by the people across the road in Chalcott Hills. So there are other platforms, you know, that should be used.
Okay, I think users will find the next section very interesting. It's about defamation. So, okay, we're going to go and take a short break. And, you know, remember that if you guys have something to say politically, you can come to Razor TV and have a chat. Okay, so we're going to take a break. Stay with us.
So I gave you a plug, right?